What's up guys? Today we're going to talk about 7-inch long range with GPS. If you're interested in getting into 7-inch category flying, this is a great primer for it and a great introduction into getting some really awesome cinematic video. If you already have a DJI Phantom or something similar but you want a different angle or twist on your video, something that just looks a little more edgy and creative, let's say, versus that straight ahead drone shot that everybody's so tired of. Hollywood, TV producers, and tons of people are using these types of quads in film and cinema to create amazing television commercials and movies. Great shots for TV shows, all kinds of stuff now. Following drift cars, race cars, dune buggies, all kinds of really cool stuff that you see out there happening. It's happening with this type of quad nowadays with a GoPro Hero 7 on the front because it has hyper smooth and it smooths everything out really nice and soft. So let me show you real quick what I'm talking about. I'll give you some examples of the Crocodil 7, what it can achieve with the GoPro Hero 7 with Hypersmooth, and what the Skystars G730L 2019 edition with iNAV can achieve. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of that footage. We'll compare both of them, and then we'll get back to the review.
Alright guys, here we go. Let's go ahead and take off with the Skystars G730L GPS iNAV edition, and what I want you to notice is right away how smooth this quad looks in the air. Now I'm flying in stability mode right here, and this is my first flight. This is what I got on my GoPro Hero 7 with Hypersmooth right off my launch pad. Not bad video. My friend was flying his sailplane. This is a Ranger 2000. I'll review that also on the channel. Great plane for medium, possibly long range FPV. Super nice flyer, but it's all about the G730L today. iNAV was working pretty good. I have not flown iNAV on a quadcopter in some time. Normally with my iNAV applications, I'm setting iNAV up on fixed wing, so generally iNAV doesn't fly quite as good on quadcopters as Betaflight. So if you prefer Betaflight, get the Croc 7, and we're going to show you some of that footage as well coming up. The thing that I noticed the most about this G730L with GPS was that I didn't see a big difference in the video quality compared to the Croc 7, which is kind of amazing. Part of that is the GoPro. The other part is the actual tune that they have on the Skystars version of this 7-inch quad is actually pretty good. Inside my goggle view, and I do apologize, my SD card was totally full, so I couldn't get that recorded for you guys, but even still, a friend of mine was there that afternoon, and he switched on his goggles. I mentioned to him to turn them on to go ahead and check out the Skystars view on his screen, because I believe he hasn't seen iNAV before, and the display is quite impressive. If you've never seen it, you should look it up on YouTube. It has all kinds of telemetry on there, and it shows you the number of satellites. I was getting up to 25 satellites with this particular GPS module, which is kind of amazing. That's a lot of satellites and a very good lock. And again, I think the video is completely acceptable for what we're doing here with this quad. So really the sky's the limit as far as what you want to do and achieve with this quad. If you want to do cinema flying, you could even freestyle this on 6S. If some people do freestyle 7-inch, I feel like it's a little bit too big for that. I feel like the 7-inch category is perfect for cinema stuff because it's nice and smooth, and it has really predictable lines. Right here I can just go straight down the line right there and whip back around, no problem. Tons of control, plenty of float and hang time. It's a really nice, enjoyable experience to fly a 7-inch. If you've never tried it before, if a friend has one, borrow it and try it. You'll be impressed with the feeling of how large this aircraft is even compared to a 5-inch. This is much bigger and way smoother. You can see it's almost sailplane-like behind this sailplane that I'm following here. Up and over, but I can change my angle in a split second with the snap of the yaw or the roll or the pitch axis. But what I'm most impressed with was the flight time. I got 22 minutes on a 4S 5000 milliamp battery, and just a little over, you can get a little over 12 minutes with a 6S 2650 battery. I'll try to put links down below for my batteries that I suggest for this quad. They're going to have the XT60 on there for you. And down low to the ground, same thing. Tons of control. If you're a beginner, if you already had a race quad and you haven't learned to fly acro, you could still fly this one. You could put it in stabilized mode. Even if you wanted to fly it off a mountain and fly in stabilized mode because you were scared of acro, you could do that with this quad and still have return to home functions. So I did test out the return to home function, and it does work. Probably a little bit better than the Betaflight version. A little more control. So now we're looking at the Geprc Crocodil 7, one of my favorite 7-inch quads for long range and cinema stuff of all time. This is way out in eastern Oregon in the middle of nowhere. We're doing a little flying here, and you know, I gotta tell you, this is one of those experiences where people ask me, oh well, how far out can it go, how far can I get this quad to go? It doesn't really have a range on it. The range depends on mostly on the battery and how far you know how to set it up to go. Some people are using Crossfire and they're sending them way out there, but you have to remember with these quads, just like the Phantoms and DJI quads, you're limited really to your battery, not so much the range anymore. So range is not really a factor here. What is a factor is that 20 minutes that you have to get back, and a lot of those factors depend on wind, weather conditions. If you have a headwind coming back, you have to really pay attention to your weather conditions, especially the wind, because it will eat your battery up twice as hard coming back. So think about that when you fly out with a tailwind. Now diving straight down the side of this mountain, tons of control with the Croc 7, and I came home with some amazing shots. And I've been collecting footage with this quad for, it feels like over 6 months now. I've flown this all over the place. Beautiful quad. The GPS even returns to home when you're in acro mode. If you choose to flip into return to home, or you fail safe, if you lose signal, it's not going to drop to the ground. It's actually going to rise up, turn around, and come back home. And that's what these quads are all about. A little bit of safety and range.
Alright guys, welcome back from the flight test for both of these drones. Both of these drones are capable of getting and achieving a 20-minute flight time with a 4S 5000 pack. This one has a little more space up top, which is how I normally prefer to mount a battery for this type of situation. There's plenty of truck bed, as I call it, back here. The GPS is mounted back here and will point straight up at the sky as you're flying on this angle. And this one has Betaflight GPS on here, which I don't trust quite as much as its counterpart. iNAV is mainly for this type of flying with GPS, and it has a little more function inside the configurator. You can download that configurator for free off the internet. Just look up iNAV configurator, and using a data cable, you can plug this into your laptop, PC, or Mac, either way you go. And once you get inside there, you can access tons and tons of control with this. So this has way more control for your GPS than the Betaflight. This one will also require some CLI setup, and that's the sort of data prompt at the very bottom of the app. You can go in and you can enter lines of code in there to change up the GPS. It also does have a Betaflight GPS tab, but not quite as much control as iNAV has. GPS on here will bring it back home. Both of these quads will bring it back in the direction that you took off from if you switch into return to home, which is great, just like on your DJI drone. The only exception with these is that they don't come back and automatically start to land. So one thing that you need to know about this type of quad, it will fly back and then you're going to take over control on the stick and then you're going to bring it in manually. A lot of times I just switch into stability mode and I just fly it over and land it right in front of myself. So I have tested this and it works great. I've also tested iNAV in that return to home situation, and about 95% of the time it is reliable. And if you're going to send it, if you're going to get way out there and do some medium to long range flying, it's imperative that you use GPS on your quad. It's just a fail-safe. If you go behind a tree or a solid object and you lose, somehow you lose signal from your Crossfire, module. If you are using Crossfire R9 or anything else to get out there, you need to have some type of return to home setup if you're flying out of your line of sight, especially with all this weight. If it falls, it could really damage some property or somebody. So you want to be responsible for your quad. I always put my name and number on these. Lost, please return if found number, and my FAA number. Now we will need to do some setup on this. You'll need to go into iNAV and tweak just a few things. I will give you guys my CLI dump down below, but I'm happy that they have included iNAV on here. I haven't seen a lot of bind and flies that have iNAV on them yet. This one has a fixed camera angle, but like I said before, you can change the angle of tilt with a little bit of foam in the very back of the GoPro. This one also does not include the stand on here. If you see the stand where my GPS is right here, this is something off an older DJI drone. You can look these up on the internet and buy these GPS stands. This allows the GPS to get up and away from all the RF that's happening down here on this base part of the drone. You don't want your GPS anywhere near the motors, on the arms, near the ESCs, or near the flight controller and ESCs, because you're going to have some signal interruption and loss of packets. If you have that happening on your GPS, then you're going to not have a reliable return to home. It's really imperative that you raise this up. I don't prefer putting it on top of the GoPro. I don't really prefer putting it on top of the battery. You can do that, but this is honestly the best way to set this up. And we're going to go ahead now over to the bench. If you guys are interested, you can watch the video further, and we'll check out some of the specs and components that they put on this one. I think they're up to par for even, up to 6S flying. So I did test it on 6, and it's good to go on 6S battery. So 6S 2650 is about as big as you want to go on here. Otherwise it starts to fly really heavy. So let's go ahead now over to the bench, and then we'll do a little more flying with this. I'll show you some of my testing with it, and then I'll come back and we'll do my final review and final score for this particular quad. Here we go.
So this quad comes in at $246 without a receiver. It is an X-frame with that extended antenna on the back. Your GPS is up top here, and iNAV is included, which is super awesome. And from the top, we get 300mm wheelbase with replaceable arms, and they're 4mm arms, and Skystars branded motors. Those are also the version 2 2306 1750 kV motors, 7-inch dowel props, 7056C, 4 bolts on the bottom plate, 4mm arms, as I said before, and also Runcam Swift 2, which looks pretty amazing on 800 milliwatt. You shouldn't have any breakup there, and a GoPro mount that is retiltable if you use a little bit of foam, and your strap. They also include 3 straps inside the box, which is nice. And this is the base of my stand right here, just a little VHB, a few zip ties. Sitting on top is the M8N GPS UBX. That will be U-blocks inside Betaflight. We're running 4 to 6S and 50 amp BLHeli 32-bit ESCs, and we have a TPU mount in the back right here for the antenna and for the receiver antennas as well. Super nice because that's not going to break off. F4 flight controller on here running iNAV, and it's the latest version of iNAV. We also have 800 milliwatt VTX with smart audio on board. So this frame pretty much has everything I would want on here for a bind and fly with iNAV. This is going to be a pretty good start with all the components they chose to put on here.
Alright guys, welcome back from the flight test. I was flying this week, and one of the flight sessions that I was flying it near a friend. Tom was out there observing, and I kept calling out the later part of the minutes as this battery pack went along this progression. It was a 4S 5000 pack on here, and I got up to, hey Tom, 18 minutes, 19 minutes, 20, 21, 22, and I flew it down to 22 minutes, which was the bare bottom bones of the battery. And I don't recommend that you fly it that long, but I really was pushing my 4S 5000 out in the field right in front of us there to see how long this quad would stay up for without totally damaging my batteries. Also to find out how hot these motors came down. And the cool thing is that the motors came down a tad warm. It was 95 degrees yesterday outside, so in a winter situation, I bet these motors would come down cool even after a 20-minute flight, which is kind of amazing for the system. Now, the other thing is that the GPS was getting an upwards of 25 satellites on here. So I had a ton of satellites reception to my GPS. I also had zero interference because I have it raised up like I showed you before here. That's going to be the best way to do that. I only have an XM Plus on here, so I couldn't go out very far beyond my field. You can get a 2 or 3 football fields out. This is a full range receiver. If you want a longer version, you're going to have to go for the R9 or put Crossfire on here, which you can do. I was very happy with the VTX on here running 800 milliwatt, crystal clear video. On the flight recording that I had, I was on the wrong channel, so it was more fuzzy. I had marching ants in the sky, but I wanted to continue that flight test to see the longest flight time I could get out of a 4S 5000. And the 4S 5000, you really can't feel the weight on the quad if you're flying slow and at that minimum throttle that I'm talking about. If you have that minimum throttle to keep ahead a straight line, you're going to have a nice conservative flight. You're not going to be punching it a lot. If you're doing cinema stuff, you're going to get a 20-minute flight out of this all day, which I think is absolutely awesome. So that's 5 stars for the flight time. I think probably about 4.0 for the quality of the stuff that's on here. I think these motors are actually pretty decent. I probably rate the motors a little bit higher at about a 4.5. I wish they were a little bit lower kV, but 1750, as long as it's under 2000 kV for a long range setup running 4 to 6S, this is you're not going to see a lot of difference in the power on a 4S battery. So the 4S battery still has power, but the 6S battery is where you can really get an extreme punch out. If you want it, it is there. But the great thing about a low kV motor is that it's going to give you a much longer, efficient flight time. And that's what we should see on these long range quads. It's a very low kV. 1600 probably would have been a little better choice, but this is one of their first releases. So I think the rest of the stuff on here, it's very similar to the 730. I believe it was the 730GL that I reviewed before without the iNAV on here and the GPS. But I think this was great that they went this direction, and I think overall we have a quad that could be rated about a 4.5 out of 5. So taking only a few points off for maybe a little bit better quality flight controller, maybe. But I have to report that the tune on here was perfect. The tune was really, really nice for a 7-inch, and honestly, 7-inch are notoriously hard to tune to get the jello out of. Before the GoPro Hero 7 with Hypersmooth, 7-inch would show you vibrations in jello as soon as you took off with a brand new build. And now we're to the point that even in the camera view, I didn't see a lot of jello. And my friend Tom that was there that day observing, he got into his goggles, and his first comment was that it was an amazingly crystal clear video. And it should have been crystal clear because I was running 800 milliwatt, but a really nice Runcam Swift 2 on here. That's kind of a classic great FPV camera. So dowel prop 7-inch, replaceable arms, 50 amp ESCs, and extra long 5.8 antenna back here. This is kind of more of a modern, longer style long range antenna. It gets the signal up there and away from the RF down below here. So great choices all around. Yeah, and definitely worth checking out if you're interested in flying long range or getting into 7-inch category. This is an easy step towards playing around with iNAV and fiddling with some of those settings, and really honestly getting in there and learning iNAV, because if you're wanting to go out and do long range and learn how to do GPS return to home FPV, this is the easy way into it. So thanks again for watching my reviews, guys. I'm Justin Davis, and this has been the Skystars 730L GPS edition with iNAV. Super stoked on this one. Thanks again, guys. Take care. I'll see you on the next one.